Jacques Vallée is one of the most respected researchers in the field of UFOs, a man who has spent decades uncovering secrets the world wasn't ready to hear.
And we started tracking things that should not have been there, that were truly unidentified. And one night we got enough data points on one of these objects that we would have been able to run that tape through a computer and compute an orbit and try to see it again. And the man in charge of the project actually confiscated that tape and erased it out of fear of ridicule. And that's really what started my interest, because scientists are not supposed to do that.
But what nobody knows is that he recently exposed details of a UFO crash site that forced the U.S. Congress to acknowledge the event publicly.
The government wasn't there. You know, these two little kids were there on the spot when the thing crashed. It actually didn't crash. It crash landed. It was under power. It didn't break apart. And the entire thing was recovered.
Imagine a craft, not from this world, lying hidden, with evidence so undeniable that lawmakers couldn't ignore it any longer. Now, think about Congress, a body that rarely admits to mysteries beyond human technology, being compelled to confirm what many have dismissed as pure speculation for decades. How can such a revelation change the way we view government secrecy, extraterrestrial life, and the stories we've been told about UFOs? Keep watching as I uncover the shocking details behind this crash site, the evidence Jacques Vallée uncovered, and why it has the entire world questioning what's really out there. There may be no figure who has shaped the study of UFOs more than the French astronomer and computer scientist Jacques Vallée. Starting in the late 1960s, Vallée pushed researchers to pay attention to the symbolic and unusual patterns found in UFO reports. He argued that modern sightings shared similarities with stories of strange beings and unexplained encounters found in old folklore and mythology. Because he was one of the first to question the idea that UFOs must come from other planets, Vallée later gained a reputation as a major voice in what many call the new ufology. His work pushed researchers of many viewpoints to rethink their assumptions about UFOs and why they might appear on Earth. Vallée's interest began early. In 1955, during a wave of sightings across France that had started the year before, 16-year-old Vallée and his mother saw a strange object not far from their home in Pontoise. It looked like a disc with a half-dome on top and hovered about half a kilometer away. According to his mother, the object eventually flew away and left several small puffs of white material behind. Vallée himself did not remember actually seeing it depart. A few years later, in 1958, Vallée was studying mathematics as an undergraduate. During that time, he wrote a letter to the well-known French UFO researcher Aimé Michel. That letter started a long partnership and regular correspondence between the two men. Vallée later completed the equivalent of a Master of Science in Astrophysics in 1961. Later that same year, while working with the Artificial Satellite Service at the Paris Observatory, Vallée witnessed something unusual. His team tracked a bright object orbiting Earth in retrograde, meaning it was moving opposite to the direction most satellites travel. When their supervisor came in and saw the data, he ordered the telex tape that recorded the tracking information to be destroyed. That moment left a strong impression on Vallée. It convinced him that scientists were not always open about data connected to UFO sightings. In 1962, Vallée moved to Evanston, Illinois, where he began a PhD program in computer science at Northwestern University. There he met Dr. Joseph Allen Hynek, who worked as the scientific consultant for Project Blue Book, the U.S. Air Force program that investigated UFO reports. Hynek and Vallée shared their research with a small network of scientists and social scientists who were also interested in the subject. The group discussed possible explanations for UFO reports and exchanged data from different investigations. Members included American hypnotherapist Leo Sprinkle and French astrophysicist Claude Poher. They referred to themselves as the Invisible College, borrowing the name from a loose group of natural philosophers who shared ideas during the 17th century. During this period, Vallée published 2 books about UFOs. The first was Anatomy of a Phenomenon in 1965, followed by A Challenge to Science in 1966. Both books supported the extraterrestrial hypothesis, often shortened to ETH, which claimed that UFOs were spacecraft operated by visitors from other planets. At that time, much UFO writing focused on dramatic stories and sensational claims, especially in the books of Donald Keyhoe and Frank Edwards. Vallée's work took a different approach and tried to apply careful research and analysis. His books quickly gave him a reputation as a serious young authority on the subject. In the fall of 1966, Vallée and Hynek were invited to advise a new study at the University of Colorado in Boulder called the Scientific Study of Unidentified Flying Objects. Both men had hoped to join the project directly, but they were prevented from doing so because they had already spoken publicly about UFO research. This meant they could not stop project leaders Edward Condon and Robert Lowe from shaping the study in a way that ignored most of the cases collected by Project Blue Book. The final report, released in 1968 and later called the Condon Report, recommended that further UFO research should not continue. It concluded that studying the subject would bring no value to science or national defense. Most leading scientists and many media outlets praised the report. Vallée reacted very differently. Frustrated by the response, he returned to France and stepped away from the scientific community for a period of time. During the following years, Vallée continued speaking with UFO witnesses and regularly discussing cases with members of the Invisible College. Over time, he began to question the extraterrestrial explanation that he had supported earlier. He started to believe that the idea of visitors from other planets was too simple to explain the wide range of sightings and witness experiences. One detail that troubled him was that many UFO reports occurred alongside other strange events. Some witnesses described ghost-like figures, unexplained sounds, or objects moving inside homes in ways often linked to poltergeist activity. He also noticed that some reports involved strange situations that did not seem logical for advanced travelers crossing interstellar distances. For example, in a 1975 interview, Vallée pointed out how often witnesses claimed they saw UFOs landed on roads with their alien crews nearby. In some cases, the craft appeared to be under repair, while the beings were seen standing outside or doing other activities. To Vallée, these details raised questions about whether the standard extraterrestrial explanation truly fit the full range of UFO encounters. He pointed out that it didn't make much sense for advanced beings to land directly in the middle of a road when they could easily choose a hidden location. Because of that, he began to suspect that some encounters might be arranged in a way that placed witnesses in front of specific images or events. Influenced by a 1958 essay by Carl Jung that described UFOs as a type of modern myth, Vallée started to think differently about these encounters. He suggested that UFO sightings and meetings with strange entities might represent something beyond simple physical craft and creatures. Instead of delivering literal messages, these experiences might communicate ideas through symbols and deeper meaning. To explore this idea, Vallée looked into historical records for reports of strange objects in the sky and encounters with unusual beings. As he studied older accounts, he noticed patterns that looked very similar to modern UFO reports. In his 1969 book, Passport to Magonia, Vallée gathered many historical examples of aerial sightings and strange entity encounters and placed them next to modern UFO cases. His argument was simple but bold. The UFO phenomenon, he believed, did not begin with Kenneth Arnold's famous sighting in 1947. It may have existed for hundreds or even thousands of years. The title of the book came from a reference written by the French bishop Agobard. In an old treatise, Agobard described stories about flying ships that came from a sky realm called Magonia. Vallée used that idea as the foundation for the book's title. The book also discussed the mysterious airship sightings reported across the United States in 1896 and 1897. It even included a medieval story recorded by Gervase of Tilbury about a flying ship that dropped an anchor over the British Isles. According to Vallée, sightings from ancient times, the Middle Ages, and the modern era mainly differ in the technology described by witnesses. Still, many reports of glowing lights moving through the sky look nearly identical across centuries. He also noticed another pattern. The stories didn't just involve strange aircraft, they also described similar types of beings, which UFO researchers later called ufonauts. Vallée compared medieval European stories about fairies, lutins, and kobolds with reports from modern UFO witnesses who described small alien figures. The similarities were difficult to ignore. He also studied stories about encounters with mysterious beings found in European mythology and in Judeo-Christian traditions about demons. Across many of these stories, the same details appeared again and again. Witnesses sometimes reported being taken away by these beings. Afterward, they described symptoms such as paralysis, exhaustion, confusion, or memory loss. Some people said they were invited to travel with these beings and were taken to strange locations or other worlds. Others described missing periods of time that they could not explain. To account for these patterns, Vallée proposed the idea of an intelligence that exists beyond our normal physical dimension, but uses advanced technology to interact with humans. According to his theory, this intelligence has been active throughout human history, while presenting itself in different forms that match the beliefs of each era. He suggested that it often appears as a highly advanced civilization that remains outside the reach of human technology and just beyond the understanding of the people who witness it. Its appearance seems to shift as human knowledge changes. In each period, it tends to resemble something slightly ahead of current technology or something that fits humanity's ideas about higher forms of life. For example, during medieval times in Europe, people reported flying ships that looked like sailing vessels in the sky. At that time, scholars were already discussing the idea that another layer of thinner air above Earth might contain a separate world. In 1896, sightings in the western United States described strange airships with flapping wings. This happened at a time when inventors across the country were experimenting with machines that might solve the problem of heavier-than-air flight. Later, in the late 1940s, witnesses began reporting metallic disc-shaped craft. This appeared just as the world's major powers were experimenting with jet technology and unusual aircraft designs shortly before the start of the space age. Many UFO researchers now see Passport to Magonia as one of the most influential books in the study of UFOs. But when the book first appeared, Vallée's ideas were not widely accepted. At that time, most UFO researchers believed the visitors were simply extraterrestrial beings from another planet. Because of his different view, Vallée often found himself isolated within the UFO community. He later described his position by saying that he had become a heretic amongst heretics. Even so, he continued developing the same ideas throughout his career. Together with researcher John Keel, Vallée helped create one of the biggest divisions within UFO research. One side continued to support the extraterrestrial explanation, while the other group began looking for different possibilities. In 1975, Vallée released two more works. One was The Invisible College, which was also published under the title UFOs, Taidi Psychic Solution. The other was a long interview he conducted with astronomer J. Allen Hynek, published as The Edge of Reality. In these writings, Vallée proposed that the UFO phenomenon might act as a type of control system. In his view, it may slowly influence human beliefs and social structures across long periods of time. By drawing from powerful symbols found in culture and tradition, the phenomenon may create stories about itself, its origin, its way of traveling, and its purpose for appearing. These stories then feed into human mythology after each new encounter. The details of these encounters can appear inconsistent or even strange. But Vallée believed that the deeper symbolic meaning behind them remains stable and often pushes people to rethink their understanding of reality. One example he studied was the famous apparitions reported in Fatima, Portugal, in 1917. Vallée suggested that this event might represent a case of contact connected to the UFO phenomenon. He also noted that many witnesses who reported seeing the so-called miracle of the sun later said the event permanently changed how they saw the world. In his 1979 book, Messengers of Deception, Vallée argued that the UFO phenomenon operates on several levels. It may involve physical events, psychological reactions, and social influence. He spent much of the book examining the psychological and social sides. According to Vallée, there might be a system of large-scale influence connected to UFO events. This system could be encouraging the rise of a new type of belief focused on the expectation that humans will eventually meet alien visitors. Without clearly identifying who or what these forces might be, Vallée suggested that their goal could involve guiding changes in human society. He believed that deception played a role in this process. Witnesses and contactees might be manipulated. Certain religious groups or cults might be used as tools. Even the ways that supposed space messages reach the public could be influenced. Because of this, Vallée argued that studying UFOs requires more than examining sightings alone. Researchers should also look at the network of religious movements, contact groups, and intelligence organizations that intersect with these stories. He also pointed out that the phenomenon often hides itself by presenting events that seem strange or unbelievable. This makes it easier for the public and mainstream culture to dismiss them. As Vallée explained it, the phenomenon negates itself. He also questioned whether traditional scientific methods were enough to investigate UFOs. Science usually studies natural systems such as plants, animals, water, and geology. But scientists rarely deal with something that might deliberately mislead observers and lead them toward incorrect conclusions. Because of that, Vallée suggested that UFO researchers might need to approach the subject more like detectives who try to understand the mind behind an event. Between 1988 and 1991, Vallée published 3 more books: Dimensions, Confrontations, and Revelations. Together, these works are often called the Alien Contact Trilogy because they focus heavily on encounters with strange entities. In Dimensions, Vallée offered one of the most detailed summaries of his ideas about UFOs and the beings associated with them. In Confrontations, Jacques Vallée recorded several cases in which UFO encounters were linked to injuries and even deaths. One example involved a series of sightings near Parnaíba, Brazil, during the early 1980s. Residents reported strange box-shaped flying objects that they called chupas. These objects reportedly chased people through forests and remote areas, while firing beams of light that caused burns and other injuries. Reports from the area claimed that at least 5 deer hunters died after encounters with the chupas. One man was said to have gone completely out of his mind, with fear after being struck by one of the beams. In Revelations, Vallée also challenged many popular UFO stories. He examined several well-known hoaxes, including claims connected to the Roswell incident. He also criticized the intense public focus on myths about Area 51 and supposed secret U.S. government UFO programs. In Dimensions, and later in a 1990 article published in the Journal of Scientific Exploration, Vallée laid out 5 reasons for rejecting the extraterrestrial explanation for UFOs, which at the time many researchers still accepted. His first point was that the number of reported UFO landings and contacts seemed far too large for a normal interplanetary mission. Some estimates suggested there may have been around 3 million UFO landings across the world within only 20 years. For a survey mission from another planet, that number appeared extremely high. Second, UFOs and their occupants often do not leave in normal ways. Instead of simply flying away or walking off, they sometimes disappear instantly, blink out of sight, or fade slowly until they are gone. This behavior led Vallée to consider the possibility that these objects and beings might act more like projections rather than solid machines. Third, the physical features and behavior of many reported ufonauts do not match what might be expected from an alien evolutionary path. In many reports, the beings look almost identical to humans. They speak human languages, breathe Earth's atmosphere, and move normally under Earth's gravity. Fourth, Vallée pointed out that messages supposedly given by these beings often contain contradictions and confusing details. In many cases, the entities claim to come from different parts of the universe and provide directions or star maps that do not make sense. One example is the 2-dimensional star map shown to Betty Hill. Finally, Vallée argued that many alien abduction stories are difficult to rely on because they contain unlikely situations. Abductees often describe painful medical procedures that modern doctors could perform easily with very little discomfort. In January 1990, Vallée traveled to the Soviet Union with Martine Castello, a journalist from the French newspaper Le Figaro. Their goal was to examine reports of UFO sightings within the Soviet Union. In 1992, he released UFO Chronicles of the Soviet Union, a book describing several of the cases he investigated and summarizing discussions he had with scientists, government officials, and intelligence officers in Moscow. In 1991, Vallée also entered the crop circle debate through an article published in New Age magazine. In that piece, he suggested that some crop circles might have been produced by military aircraft using directed microwave beams. Years later, in the spring of 2010, he expanded on that theory in a series of articles published on boingboing.net. Since the early 1990s, Vallée has spent less time actively researching UFO cases, though he has never fully stepped away from the topic. Outside of UFO studies, he works as a venture capitalist and has written many books on investing, technology, and science fiction. In 2003, UFO historian Chris Obeck launched an online forum called the Magonia Exchange. The project aimed to collect records of unusual aerial sightings that occurred before 1947. Through that work, Obeck connected with Jacques Vallée. The two later worked together to publish a collection of 500 reports describing strange objects seen in the sky from ancient times through the early industrial period. The book allows readers to compare reports from different cultures and historical eras. It shows that accounts of unusual objects in the sky appear repeatedly across long periods of history. In more recent years, Vallée has supported calls for greater transparency from the U.S. government about UFO information. He also wrote the foreword for the first book in Tom DeLonge's Secret Machines, God's series, which examines world religions through the idea that UFO contact groups may have influenced ancient beliefs. Vallée appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast in December 2020, alongside filmmaker James Fox. The two had recently worked together on the documentary The Phenomenon. During the conversation, Vallée spoke about recent disclosures involving Luis Elizondo and the UAP task force. Although he expressed doubts about claims that UFOs represent a direct national security danger, he mentioned that certain U.S. laboratories might have studied materials believed to come from crashed UFOs. One example he referred to involved objects linked to sightings above Washington, D.C. in 1952. However, Vallée chose not to share further details, saying he did not want to interfere with ongoing research. When Joe Rogan asked him directly what he thought the UFO phenomenon might be, Vallée responded with a cautious idea. Rogan: of an idea of what you think this is? Vallée: there is some form of consciousness out there that's teaching us something. In May 2021, Vallée self-published another book with investigative journalist Paola Leopizzi Harris. The book describes an alleged UFO crash in 1945 that reportedly occurred about 20 miles from the location where the first atomic bomb was tested at White Sands, New Mexico. According to witnesses who are still alive, they saw both the crash and a large U.S. government recovery operation that followed. Vallée's work did more than question the extraterrestrial explanation for UFOs. He also moved attention away from simply asking where UFOs come from and toward examining how these events affect human experience and society. That shift in focus influenced later researchers such as John Mack, Hilary Evans, and Micah Hanks. It also inspired writers, including Brad Steiger, Jason Reza Giuliani, and Graham Hancock, who have explored links between UFOs, consciousness, and other unusual subjects. Vallée's ideas also reached popular culture. His work helped inspire the character Claude Lacombe in Steven Spielberg's film Close Encounters of the Third Kind. His lasting influence comes from the wide impact he has had on the study of UFO sightings and unusual phenomena. Through his work, Vallée encouraged researchers to ask new questions and to consider explanations beyond simple answers. Now, let's discuss a bizarre event that has the people of Lowestoft talking. Last week, in the early hours of the morning, a mysterious UFO reportedly crash-landed in the front garden of a residential property. Locals had previously spotted strange lights in the sky, often chased by military jets, just before the object came down. Fortunately, the home itself wasn't damaged, but the impact left a large trench in the lawn and destroyed a section of the fence. Simon Blackwood, a nearby resident, shared photos and updates on Facebook, noting that even though the police had taped off the area, crowds continued to gather day and night to see the craft. The UFO appears to be disc-shaped, and according to rumors circulating in the community, the homeowner has gone missing, fueling speculation about a possible alien abduction. Authorities have asked onlookers to maintain a safe distance while they investigate the situation. The crash site is located on Drake's Heath, just north of Lake Lothing and the Inner Harbor. Police have indicated the object will remain there until roughly a week after Halloween, while they assess potential contamination risks. Meanwhile, Kirsty and Simon Blackwood set up a Just Giving page to raise funds for Norfolk and Waveney Mind, linking the unusual event to supporting mental health, especially given the rise in anxiety and depression during the COVID-19 pandemic. Eyewitnesses say it looks as though a body fell from the bottom of the UFO, adding to the mystery. Locals have been donating and leaving messages of concern for the missing homeowner. The incident continues to attract attention, blending intrigue, fear, and curiosity in equal measure. So, what are your thoughts on these mysteries? Let us know in the comments below, and subscribe to our channel for more content like this.